This is the beginning of a beautiful...
You killed them! This is the worst Uber ride ever. You're getting 4 stars.
Today's episode revolves around Todd Flanders' crisis of faith after his mother Maud's death, and Homer and Ned's search for reconciliation and understanding, culminating in a death, then a return to life, and a new hope for the family.
I'd say thanks for nothing. My mommy's dead and she's never coming back, and I don't believe in God anymore.
The episode begins one night with Ned sleeping until he dreams of his ex-wife Maud. He sees her in his room, and after making a few comments about the way she dresses, she disappears. However, Ned asks for a kiss, and Maud returns, doing what he asks. At that moment, Ned wakes up to a dog licking his mouth, bringing him back to reality, and he begins to cry. His youngest son, Todd, enters the room and asks why his dad is crying. Ned reveals that it's because of the boy's mother and takes the opportunity to ask Todd if he dreams of her. Todd hesitates to respond, but eventually remembers his last dream. He shares that in the dream, he was being pushed in a cart by his mom in a very happy place. However, as they climb a mountain of gelatin, the cart's wheel broke, making him fall. And when Maud turned to him, she appeared faceless.
It's okay, son. Just a bad dream. Want some lukewarm water?
Daddy, I can't remember what Mommy looks like.
Surprisingly, Ned reacts well to the news and suggests they watch old videos of Maud. At this moment, Todd's older brother suddenly enters the room, scaring everyone. Now, the family is gathered in the living room watching a Christmas video. In the video, Maud helps Todd overcome his fear of putting the star on top of the tree. Soon after, Homer and Grandpa Simpson barge into the house. Despite arguing with them, Maud invites them to dinner, and Homer accepts that Grandpa can stay. Right after, Rod, the older brother, comments on how kind his mother was. When Ned says she still is, Todd starts questioning how his dad could know that. Ned responds by explaining that faith is believing in something you can't see. However, Todd recalls his math teacher saying that believing in things you can't see is madness, which makes Ned very upset, even changing his tone while talking to his son. Later, Todd remains in the living room watching videos of his mom. In a moment of sadness, he asks for a sign, wishing that if his mother still believed in him, she would show it somehow. But at that moment, the video cuts to a scene of Homer imitating the sound of a guitar, interrupting the serious moment with something unexpected and funny. The scene shifts to a Sunday where the whole town is at church. Bart tries to sneak out but is stopped by security. Even Dr. Julius Hibbert seems concerned about the time, while Reverend Lovejoy passionately delivers his sermon and Homer watches a game on his phone. At the end of the sermon, the Reverend invites the children of the congregation to come forward while a song plays in the background. The Reverend then asks the children what they would say to Jesus if they had the chance to thank him for something. Rod is the first to respond and says something sweet. Ralph, as always, makes a cute and funny comment at the same time.
I'd say thanks for nothing. My mommy's dead and she's never coming back, and I don't believe in God anymore.
The revelation is so intense that Ned, shaken, collapses on the spot. Later, a quarter shows up in front of Todd's house, singing a song that narrates how Maud's death happened. During the song, it's revealed that Homer was to blame, as he accidentally caused her to fall down the stairs, leading to the tragic event. This brings Homer's responsibility for the accident back into focus, creating a tense and emotional atmosphere for Todd and his family. Inside the Flanders house, everyone is sitting on the couch in silence. The tension builds until Ned can't hold it anymore and starts saying that everyone would go to hell since Todd had spoken against God in his own house. Todd, confused and angry, asks why God needs so many houses and why he doesn't donate them to the poor. Ned, unsure how to respond, asks for a moment alone. He goes into a closet and, out of his children's earshot, starts swearing to release his anger. After calming down, he leaves the closet, puts money in the swear jar as punishment, and returns to the kids. Trying to regain control of the situation, he announces that he will call Reverend Lovejoy. In his conversation with the Reverend, Ned explains that he needs help with his son, who has lost his faith. However, when the Reverend sees his wife calling him, he rushes the conversation, saying he needs to go to his daughter's ballet recital, ending the call quickly.
Lord, please punish my boy thoroughly, so he may once again believe in thy divine mercy.
Daddy, I have a problem.
When Rod explains that the problem was that he watched a TV show without permission, Ned feels immense relief and, surprisingly, gives Rod permission to keep watching the show, as now Todd believes even less in God. The next morning, Todd joins the family for breakfast, but his behavior is visibly more withdrawn. He avoids making eye contact with Ned and his older brother Rod. During the meal, Ned tries to initiate the traditional family prayer, but Todd, clearly uncomfortable, doesn't say amen at the end. Ned insists, asking Todd to respond, but the silence continues. Worried about how serious Todd's detachment from God has become, Ned starts thinking this is a much bigger issue than he initially thought. He reflects on possible solutions and, in his desperation, considers the idea of putting Todd through hell on earth so he would feel bad and return to the path of faith.
Isn't there some hell on earth I could briefly place him in?
Let me in, boy. The school bus will be here any minute.
To find your clothes, just solve this series of clues.
Bart, laughing from inside the house, plays guessing games with his dad, but Homer can't get any of them right. As time goes by, Bart's school bus approaches. Since Homer is still outside in just his underwear, all the kids start laughing at him. This unusual scene gives Ned a big idea, as he's in a moment of despair. However, he's caught off guard when Homer shows up at the window asking for some pants. Then comes Ned's big decision, to kick Todd out of the house. With a sad look, Todd walks with his suitcase toward the Simpsons house. When he gets to the door, he's welcomed by Marge, who brings him inside and offers comfort. From outside, Rod watches the scene and asks his dad if he loves him now. Ned, in a serious tone, explains that asking that question is committing the sin of pride, highlighting the complexity of his emotions as he deals with Todd's situation. At the Simpsons house, Marge is on the phone with Ned, assuring him that Todd will be fine while he stays there. Meanwhile, Todd is watching TV with Lisa. She approaches him and says she understands his decision to abandon the family's faith, and Todd thanks her for the support. Excited by the idea of helping her friend, Lisa starts recording what Todd said and mentions that there's a new god for him, Buddha, who brings lots of inner peace. She shows him a picture of Buddha and asks Todd to consider it. Curious, Todd asks what happens after death, and Lisa explains that, according to this religion, the person would reincarnate in the body of an animal, human, or ghost. However, Todd doesn't show interest in Lisa's ideas.
Pass. Buddha's no god, and neither is God.
Don't worry, I'll get him. By the way, what did you reincarnate David Bowie as?
The next morning, everyone is having breakfast when Marge decides to ask where Todd is. Bart seizes the opportunity and starts ranting about how awful it was having Todd clean his entire room. At that moment, Todd shows up and greets Grandpa Simpson, surprising everyone as not even his Alexa spoke directly to him. Todd's attitude, being kind and polite, creates an unexpected moment at the table, leaving everyone intrigued by his change in behavior. That night, Marge is reading a book in bed when Homer shows up, wanting to kiss her. However, Marge refuses to be intimate with Homer, explaining that Todd is in the house. Homer doesn't take this excuse well, arguing that they've had kids in the house for 10 years. Marge, for her part, explains that she doesn't feel comfortable with the situation since Todd is used to silence, and any noise they make would wake him up. When Todd, from his room, confirms that that's true, Homer starts thinking of ways to get the boy out of his house. The next day, while Todd is looking out the window, Homer comes up with a funny comment, saying he doesn't believe the Lord's face was on a piece of toast. He shows the toast to Todd and starts quoting a part of the Bible related to his claim. However, Todd, knowing Homer is making it up, isn't convinced, and Homer's efforts to persuade him fail.
So much innocent bread died for my sins. So innocent.
Later, the school bullies are pulling their usual mean-spirited pranks when Bart arrives and introduces Todd as his new roommate. He explains that Todd will stay with them until he believes in God again. One of the bullies is surprised to hear that Todd doesn't believe in such a special, divine being who created everything they loved. However, another bully shows up and says they're just creations of his mind, which doesn't sit well with Jimbo. In a fit of rage, Jimbo pushes the bully down a hill into a river. Bart, seeing the situation, takes the chance to show Todd how bad kids behave and asks if Todd wants to go back home. The conversation is interrupted by Jimbo, who says he doesn't want to be used as a bad example. At that moment, Todd, in an act of sincerity, loudly declares that he believes all of Bart's friends are going to hell. Back to Homer and Marge's private life, the two hide in the basement to be intimate. However, even then, Todd manages to hear everything. Homer tries to cover up the noise by turning on the washing machine, but Todd calls out that he knows exactly what Homer is doing, mentioning that Homer is unbuttoning his own shirt. Faced with the situation, Homer begins communicating with Marge by writing messages on paper, trying to prevent Todd from hearing their conversations, but the idea doesn't work. Meanwhile, Todd keeps looking out the window. At that moment, Lisa shows up and comments that he's seeking enlightenment. This observation irritates Todd, who, in a fit of frustration, begins to consider the beliefs of everyone around him as idiotic. Now Homer is with Todd in a park, and in a moment of attempted consolation, he offers some advice. He tells Todd that he doesn't really need to believe in God, he just has to go to church and nod along, even if inside he's asleep in his faith. Todd, however, doesn't take this suggestion well and makes it clear that he truly no longer believes, especially since his mom is gone and never coming back. He questions Homer, asking if he knows what that kind of loss feels like.
You never cook anything worth eating.
Well, who wants to cook for a failure?
Good God, woman, why did you marry me?
To piss off my mother.
Which ended with his mother deciding to leave without saying goodbye to him. She did this because she believed it was bad to say goodbye and thought she'd never find a good husband. Back in the present, Homer finds himself crying, lamenting his mother's departure. He expresses sadness not only for her absence, but also because his ice cream had melted, symbolizing his personal losses. Additionally, he complains about his hair, making a joke about how his appearance has deteriorated over the years. Homer rushes to Moe's tavern, quickly ordering drinks because he urgently needs to get drunk. As soon as Moe serves the drink, they hear another voice asking for a drink. When they look over, they see it's Ned Flanders, who reveals that he's losing everything. Moe, however, warns that he can't serve Ned because he's too good a person. Despite this, Ned begs for just one drink, causing Moe to give in and prepare the drink for him. After his first beer, Ned continues to down several more with Homer, and the two have a lively conversation, enjoying each other's company. This night of indulgence and uncontrolled chatter allows Moe to make so much money that he buys himself an extremely expensive coat.
Oh, Homer, I always thought you proved the existence of God. I mean, you fall off cliffs and you're fit as a fiddle.
Well, ain't that a diddle?
After some time, the two grab their coats and get ready to leave the bar. Homer comments on how much he enjoyed drinking with Ned, reinforcing the bond that formed between them that night. However, as soon as they leave the bar and cross the street, they are hit by an Uber carrying a passenger. The passenger, visibly annoyed, says that the driver is the worst Uber ever, and for that, she's only giving him 4 stars.
You guys, this is the beginning of a beautiful...
You killed them!
The scene then shifts to the sky, where Ned and Homer arrive together. As God welcomes them, Ned comments on how the place is just as beautiful as he imagined. God explains that everyone has their own vision of heaven, and when we see what Homer sees, instead of angels, it's flying food. Ned is puzzled and asks how Homer also managed to get into heaven. God responds that, for some reason, sloth became a virtue 2 years ago. The three then begin walking through heaven until they come across Jesus. Soon, Homer is surprised to meet Abraham Lincoln, and the two engage in a deep conversation about which was the best movie Abe ever produced. However, God interrupts the conversation, reminding them that they still have other people to meet. As soon as God hands them each a badge, they realize it's a visitor's badge. God explains that this is because their bodies aren't dead yet. Now we see Homer and Ned both hospitalized, surrounded by their families during this delicate moment. Soon, Dr. Hibbert appears, heading straight to Ned. He promises to do everything possible to bring him back to life. Upon hearing this, Marge quickly asks about Homer's condition, and the doctor gives a vague response, hinting that everything will be as it should, before leaving the room laughing. Meanwhile, Bart and Lisa are looking out the hospital room window, and Lisa is amazed by how many people are gathered there, realizing her dad has touched so many lives.
That's Flanders' Vigil. Dad's over there.
Vigils are a surprisingly large part of this job. Oh yeah!
Bart and Lisa then talk about their dad. Lisa approaches Bart, crying, and Bart begins to pray silently, asking God not to take his dad. He tries to hide his true feelings, and when Lisa asks why he's praying, Bart quickly replies that it's because he wanted a new bike. Later, Marge approaches Todd and asks if he'd like to pray for his father. Todd, however, explains that he doesn't see the point in praying because he believes no one is listening to his prayers. Marge tries to comfort him, explaining that prayer doesn't have to be directed to a specific God. It can be a sincere conversation with oneself. She encourages him to follow his heart. Todd then kneels on the floor and starts praying, still unsure who he's addressing.
Rejoice, rejoice, O Springfield town, 'cause what...
The scene shifts to heaven, where Homer is having a blast surrounded by beer. He sees references to Marge and even baseball games, where he's winning all the bets. He enthusiastically comments that heaven couldn't be a better place. Flanders, playing a harp beside him, agrees. Suddenly, a cloud opens up, and Homer sees his son Todd praying. Todd's expression is one of deep concentration and sincerity.
And it's working! I'm returning to my family. Bye, Homer.
Next, it's Homer's turn, and he reunites with his mom. She hugs him and says she can finally say goodbye, expressing her happiness that they were good people in her lives. When she asks for a hug, Homer feels fulfilled and embraced, but he soon disappears as his body is returning to life. Flanders, realizing what's happening, joyfully celebrates his return to this beautiful world. Homer, on the other hand, gets up without saying a word, and his family rushes to him. Todd, emotional, tells his dad that he started believing in God again. Ned celebrates, acknowledging that 2 lives were saved thanks to prayer. At that moment, the doctor shows up wearing an expensive coat and reminds them that medicine also played a big part in their recovery. With a smile, he jokingly tells them they owe him $12,000, finding humor in the situation. In the next scene, Lisa is talking to Buddha, expressing her desire to reach nirvana, but Buddha denies her request, stating that she hadn't even managed to lead Todd Flanders to find his faith. Determined, Lisa argues that she did get Ralph on the journey, but Buddha responds that he doesn't know what to do with Ralph. At that moment, Ralph interrupts, claiming that everything was nothing, leaving Buddha perplexed. The episode ends with a post-credits scene.
Good night, Roddy.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and your comment. See you in the next videos.